Hi, good morning, everybody. And those of you who are watching online, so glad that you are here. Welcome to the Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church, affectionately referred to as the Baptist Church in Mississippi County. And I probably should put the music down so I can't start talking. Shut up. Let me handle this as I multitask. On behalf of the beautiful people at the Blackest Church in Memphis and Shelby County, I want to welcome y'all to today's event, the Black Women's Suffrage, focusing on Ida B. Wells, the panel discussion, and all the other wonderful things that will be happening throughout the day. I am Dr. Earl Fisher. I'm the proud pastor of this congregational network of friends and kin. There are a couple of Abyssinians here. Our trustee, Gail Tyree, is here. Of course, Siju is a Abyssinian as well. And so if you're watching online, do us a favor and please share this. It's going to be some wonderful information that you want to make sure you get and make sure other people get as well. Today is a very important day. It's August the 1st, and today is the last day of early voting in Memphis and Shelby County. And as a matter of fact, across all of Tennessee, for those of you who are here in the sanctuary, in your chair is a flyer because this launches Abyssinians Faith in Action Weekend. Immediately after our event today, Abyssinians will meet up at the nearest polling precinct, which is Abundant Grace Fellowship Church on the corner of Mill Branch and Shelby Drive. So if you are here today and you have not already voted, shame on you. No, I'm just playing. If you have not already voted, you are more than welcome to join us up there for some fellowship and then some faithful action insofar as casting our vote and our ballot is concerned. Also, on tomorrow is our Family and Friends Day. It starts at 10 o'clock. We would love to have you or you who are watching online come back in the morning and spend some time with us. Abyssinian is a very unique place, and I'm sure most of you, if this is your first time being in here, felt some of that when you got in here. Siju and the rest of the Planned Parenthood team. Also, salute to MLK 50. And on behalf of Other Vote 901, we thank y'all for being here. If you need to know the restrooms, directly through those double doors, first door to the left for the men, second door to the left for the women. There are snacks in the back. And if you got any questions about anything Abyssinian related, I look forward to responding to you, or Sister Gail or Brother Siju can do it. But for now, would y'all put your hands together and receive Brother Siju Waller Crawford?
All right. So again, thanks for everybody who's in attendance, whether in the building or on the live stream. Today's programming is really obviously featuring Ida B. Wells. We have some panelists who will join us. After this, we will do something that I think is unique. We're going to create a digital archive. We would like to get everybody's first or maybe peak voter experiences. I will leave that to the journalists to decide what questions to ask. My niece, whose name is Romia, just turned 1 a couple of weeks ago. She was born on the same day as Ida B. Wells, which is July 16th. Ida was born in 1962, which means she turned 1 just after the Emancipation Proclamation and before Juneteenth. She was born in Holly Springs, Mississippi, and she kind of reminds me of my paternal grandmother, whose parents died when she was very young, leading her to step up and take care of her siblings. She did that initially by being a teacher. She taught right here in Memphis's segregated Shelby County schools, and she was outspoken like somebody that I might know. And it caused them to not renew her contract after her 7th year. And so at that point, she goes full time into her work as a journalist at a paper that was called Memphis Free Speech, where she was also part owner. Her writing about lynching is probably the most comprehensive work that we've had. And by all accounts, it was militant and aggressive. And it was influenced by the murder of one of her closest friends, Thomas Moss. He, along with Calvin McDowell and Will Stewart, owned the People's Grocery Store, which is at the corner of Mississippi Boulevard and Walker in South Memphis, near Lemoyne-on College. I should have said South Memphis, right? They were murdered, according to Wells, because their business was successful and challenged the white hegemony of the owner, William Barrett. He had a store across the street, and he had enjoyed kind of a monopoly on the black grocery market prior to this store. He led this lynch mob as an embodiment of white supremacy deputized, and this was pivotal. It changed her. And in her own words, the suffrage movement work that she did after being threatened and run to Chicago for her candor about lynching was largely about safety and the advancement of the race. The work that she did in spaces like the Alpha Suffrage Club was intention because she championed equality among the sexes in political space and would not compromise her message for political expediency. Now, some under the guise of what we call intersectionality today would hear this and kind of think about some of our modern gender wars and assume she was a progenitor. But she didn't believe that, for example, electing women too was the same as electing women only. Her best friend was a man. She got married to a man, and despite the chiding of her white feminist friend, Susan B. Anthony, she thought that there was a fulfilling relationship. Consider these three quotes. One, she said, "The city of Memphis has demonstrated that neither character nor standing avails the Negro if he dares to protect himself against the white man or become his rival." Two, she said, "The more the African American yields and cringes and begs, the more he has to do so. The more he is insulted, outraged, and lynched." Third quote, "A Winchester rifle should have a place of honor in every Black home, and it should be used for their protection, which the law refuses to give." She was radical for her time then, and even now. She was already foreshadowing the stuff that we might call respectability, pacifism, and reaching across the aisle. So I'd like to end my spiel here and welcome to the stage the panelists with these three thoughts. One, the reason to talk about Ida B. Wells deeply as opposed to discussing all the folks sort of superficially is the chance it gives us to wrestle with the myriad complexities and contradictions of movement work and identity, then and now, and in a person who is a microcosm of the complexity and contradiction in the whole movement. You could do that with anybody, really, but I chose her out of admiration and identification. The second thing is, while it could be easy for some extremists to use this moment to forge her into a mouthpiece or an author surrogate in the literary sense, only to use some of her quotes and tensions to talk trash about white people and Black men, past and present, all the while forging a false political solidarity and monolith among Black women, her life just blows all of that up. She loved Thomas Ross as a friend. That was the only thing that she and Mary Church Terrell agreed about. She and Margaret Murray Washington were just not friends. And she loved Ferdinand Barnett, her husband. The last thing, though I identify with her more than some other folks who were in tension with her, I'm not championing the rightness of her attitudes, her behaviors, and choices over those of other people. I'm celebrating the witness of her life, which shows how we can have complex relationships and still be powerful in our work. Because after all, she and the folks with whom she shared love and rivalry, they all made significant contributions to this work. So as I call up our panelists to the stage, know that we've already shared some dialogue to prepare for this moment, so it's not riddled with purity politics and call outs to everybody but our particular group, but it is rising with the reflection of personal and political texture and resonating with the righteousness of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our personal and political lives. I hope that this conversation inspires us all to start or continue navigating our personal and political relationships on a course towards fair policy and loving community for everybody in a way that is increasingly intentional and informed and not just ideologically intersectional. With that said, I'm C.G. Crawford. I'd like to introduce our panelists and welcome them on up to the stage. Okay. There may be some, I don't want to put you on the spot. I thought that was our agreement. Okay. But we're going to have a conversation. Nobody will be deeply. So I'd like to start with giving folks an opportunity to introduce themselves. And so they might tell us their name, what they do, and like what would pull them into any interest about Ida B. Wells and maybe political life.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Ray, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager with MLK 50 Justice Through Journalism. I guess what brings me to this work is I've always considered myself a movement journalist, which is something I feel strongly that Ida B. Wells was as well. Um, Someone that sees things that are impacting their community and seeks to tell the truth honestly about what's happening through their journalism. And I feel like I try to carry that same sentiment into the work that I do at MLK 50 by connecting to different communities across Memphis and bringing them closer to the journalism that we do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Winsley. I do voter engagement here in Shelby County, and I identify with Ida B. Wells just from the thought of working to work in community with people, with organizing with people, and motivating people. And so I just love her spirit, her tenacity just to go after it for the people, with the people. And so that's just something that I admire about her.
All right. So let's jump into it. I take for granted that people know what suffrage is. And so while I'm saying I take for granted, we should just say what it is. It's the right to vote. It sounds like suffer, but it's something a little better. And another term for that might be to franchise. So when people can't vote, we say that they are disenfranchised. And so among her sort of feisty spirit, among her Ida B. Wells's work on lynching, we know that she was very heavily involved in this idea of the enfranchising of Black women. And we know that one of her dear friends, but also somebody she found herself in tension with, was Susan B. Anthony, a kind of renowned white feminist. So what, if anything, do you think made the Black suffrage movement for women different than, say, what Susan B. Anthony might have been dealing with?
So for me, it's just always been interesting. Susan B. Anthony is always highlighted through history as this pillar of womanhood, of where we should desire to be like. But then we have, on contrast, someone like Ida B. Wells, who is straight facts, no chaser, always to the point, always there. And she advocates for the rights of women, but also women that look like us. And so it's not just the conventional sense of being a woman, but also being authentic to who you are and speaking on the facts and realities of the world that you live in. And I say worlds with an S because it's not just about being a woman, but it's also being a Black woman. It's also being a woman who is living with the racism of living in the South. And I see so many parallels of the things that Ida B. Wells had to experience during her times, even here today. And so I just see her vision, not just in the past sense, but in the present and the future as well. And so I see her as a visionary, really, even to this day. So that's something I appreciate her. And it's an interesting juxtaposition to the history of Susan B. Anthony, rather.
Well, so one of the things about their relationship is that Susan B. Anthony kind of wanted people to be quiet about Black women getting the right to vote, because what she was trying to do, and this hint may sound like some contemporary things, is she did not want to alienate conservative white folks. She wanted to find political solidarity with them. And so she, there were, not Susan B. Anthony wanted to find this solidarity. And so she and some other Black women just felt like people like Ida B. Wells should be quiet about it. So in this way, Ida B. Wells is absolutely a precursor to folks who were saying, nah, we got to talk about race and we got to talk about sex. Now, what I find in reading about her is that it was a little different than some of the things that we see today in the name of that, because for her, largely a reason for voting is to improve the material and social conditions of all Black people, starting with just safety, right? And so as we sit here in a city where we're occupied by all the alphabet of the federal government, and today is the funeral of Tyron Johnson, killed by the National Guard, which some could argue could be a lynching, right? What's in the backdrop of everything that she is talking about in the late 1800s, early 1900s is we need to vote so we can change the rules so that we can't be killed and it be okay. We need to change the laws so that we're not lynched and there is no justice. And so I find that that's still true. You mentioned some things about contemporary. What reminded you? What does it remind you about today?
Well, as I was reading up about Ida B. Wells, just to refresh my thought and my knowledge about it, it gave me flashbacks to the 2024 election, to where people were literally trying to plead with white women and say, see Black women that could speak for you and advocate for you, and we want the same things for our family, but we also want our safety, and just see our humanity and who we are. And I felt like it was at a point to where it was kind of patronizing at this point. Like, we're begging white women to see us as Black women as capable when we are already capable. Ida B. Wells would be like, no, here is the facts. This is what it is. And we have to respect our humanity as a people, as a Black people. And so I just got real flashbacks to just remembering all the Zooms of like people like trying to hold the hand of white women and beg them and say, hey, please understand, vote for your best interests. And so it just gave me those realization that, Ida B. Wells, she was seeing even way into the future until now. And so it's just really interesting for me.
So that brings up a thing that we talked about in robust conversation in preparation for this, which is the idea of vote betrayal. The idea that people might vote against their own interests, maybe for proximity to power, which in this country might be white supremacy or heavy corporate investment or anything like that. At this stage, it was more clearly for survival. And even as I say that, I'm arguing with myself. My tension is like, when we are watching people struggle with food insecurity, when we're watching the price of housing triple in my lifetime, when we're watching, again, people just wanting to be safe in the city, maybe it's still about survival. But theoretically, like, it could be that we've made some level of progress since then. And I'm just curious, what parallels do you find where people might be operating in what could be called like voter betrayal, like you're voting against your own interests?
I think, when we look at the demographics after an election and you see that white women, overall vote against their best interests, we see the demographics for the presidential election and you see how many white women decided to vote for Donald Trump, or even when it comes to talking about reproductive rights. And on one hand, we look at data and information that tells one story about how white women are accessing abortion care. And then you hear another story from white women about how they feel about abortion care. Maybe they feel like everybody shouldn't have access to it. So I think in situations like that, it's really clear that they say that oftentimes some white women say one thing and do another. And I think to Black women, that's not surprising. I think that's something that we experience quite often, whether that's with, the example of abortion care, the example of voting, the example of our safety, and how we show up. And I think that it just paints a much fuller picture as to how they see allyship versus how allyship really is supposed to be. They say, they'll show up for Black women, and they say that they'll do that in the polls. And then, their vote says a different story.
Anything come up for you?
Oh, it's tight, but it's right. Hey, she hit the nail on the head with that one. I'm just Full agreement.
All right. So one of the things that we had talked about previously was, if anything, what Black women running today mean, and I would like for us to think about this in a general sense, like maybe not necessarily focused on any particular folks, but also feel free if you want to, because I'm thinking whether it's Kamala Harris, whether it's London Lamar, whether it's the school board folks who ran, or even Black women who aren't elected officials. Like, we have some community groups who are in tension. Because one of the things that I talked about or we talked about earlier was like, vote betrayal is not just like Black men who didn't vote for Kamala, or political betrayal. It is so much more complicated than that. So we could talk about the fact that we live in Memphis and some of our Hispanic brothers and sisters are being plagued by the DOJ and ICE. But by the numbers, we might have to ask the question, like, did some of them support Donald Trump? And so for whatever reason, did their vote, help hurt their own lived situation? But out of that, there's this idea that Black women then and now showed up differently. So whether it's Candace Owens or whether it's Mary Church Terrell, right? Whether it's a AKA or a Delta who lives in like a more highfalutin scenario, or you're talking about Ida B. Wells, whose parents dies at 16 and she's taking care of her siblings, people show up differently. So the question is, does the way Ida B. Wells showed up mean that she did more for the movement? Did Mary Church Terrell also advance the movement? Were they ever friends? Like, how do we deal with political difference and tension? She's like,
I can go with that one. I think the reality of it is, this is a country saying, it's not one way, it's multiple ways to skin a cat.
Okay.
Like, honestly, it's different ways of doing things. And I don't think that's to say if one way is right, the other way is wrong. I think what works for one person might work for a different person. So I like to think of the juxtaposition of Kamala Harris and also Jasmine Crockett. Okay. One would say Jasmine Crockett, she's very outgoing. She'll tell you like it is. She's very authentic. Whereas Kamala is, a prosecutor background, so she's very tight and to the point. You might think that they're different on a political spectrum because they might speak differently, they might move differently, they might have different ways of getting towards a certain point. However, at the same point in time, if you were to ever read Kamala Harris' book, she was a ready advocate of Jasmine Crockett. She was the one who wanted Jasmine Crockett on that DNC stage to give a speech as she was getting the nomination for the Democratic Party. And so that's not to say one way is right and the other way is wrong, because we can both advocate for each other together in order to get to this place together. And I think that's the spirit of Ida B. Wells, is that, she might have been shut out of some places, but uniting women in other groups and bringing them together. And it's the power of us, like reaching out to another Black woman and say, hey, you might see this differently, but we can conquer things easier together in a different way. And so I think that's the power of just working in community with Black women. And so I could just appreciate that from Ida B. Wells.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that she might have been shut out of some places, and I want to give you guys the space to speak to it. I'm happy to chime in too. But where might she have been shut out of, and can you speak to any of those reasons why? Or maybe I can start it off this way. There was a protest in 1913. The point of the protest was suffrage. The white folks and some of the Black folks agreed with them, wanted the Black folks to march in the back. So this would have been one of the instances where a Mary Church Terrell and her sorority go ahead and line up in the back. Ida B. Wells decides that she's going to break form, get to the front and march where she wants to march. And so she was sort of ostracized from that. We could go further if we're talking about the National Association for Black Women. She probably should have been, by many arguments, the person who would be the founding president, because she had done so much of the work on lynching, but they picked her rival over her. Same thing with the NAACP board and all of these things. And so what they really kept saying to her is that she was too radical, too militant, too bold, too confrontational, not getting along with the people in Pulaski. I'm sorry, right? Like, and so the question is like, do we see that today? What does that bring up for you? How do you feel about it? Are we having any conversations about reaching across the aisle, people who may be too militant or too radical or that sort of thing?
I think we see that even today in like the social media debates of it all. People might not like someone's delivery, or people might not like how they arrive at the truth. But the honest reality of it all is we got to put it out on the floor to have these discussions and these dialogues. But also we have to find a solution of it all. And so I feel like Ida B. Wells was like eyes on the prize of it all, like knowing that we have to get somewhere, we have to prove this point, we have to put this out into the ecosystem that people can see what the issue is and what the concern is, and we have to be fearless in that pursuit. And I feel like that happens even in our communities today. And so we have to just be honest about that, the issues that plague us, and focus on that. And so people have different ways of doing it, but I admire Ida B. Wells' authenticity of it all, to speak on the truth.
So widening it, we talked about some other folks that we felt like did similar work. People brought different names. If you saw playing in the intro, we had quotes that kind of come from several women who've been integral to freedom fighting. And so I'd like to kind of use this part to widen it to other people past, other people present. We felt it might be appropriate to talk about other people who are contemporizing his work. And so who are folks that you follow currently, whether you feel like they would be Ida B. Wells or in tension with Ida B. Wells? Who are folks that you guys are following?
I mean, the first person that definitely comes to mind when I think about Memphis is Amber Sherman. Right now at MLK 50, we have a partnership with her. It's our creator in residence partnership, where she will create videos civically educating people about what's going on. And I think that some of the work that she's doing definitely is in line with like who Ida B. Wells was, and just like informing people about what's happening and organizing them and moving them in a direction of change.
Awesome. Anybody for you? You're a registrar. Can you do it?
Yes. I would like to highlight the ladies of the Equity Alliance. They do some phenomenal work. Senator Oliver, starting back to their conception, Tequila, and also Rachel, just acknowledging those Black women in those spaces who sometimes people might criticize, but you can see that they have a heart for community and a heart for people. Even with Senator Charlene Oliver doing the special session at the Capitol, they didn't like her delivery of her protest. They said, you must have decorum. You can't stand on these desks. This is the hall of the Senate. This is the General Assembly. Why would you protest? Well, she's protesting because you're literally, for another situation, you already chopped up the home of Nashville, but then you're also chopping up Memphis. So you're chopping up these Black communities in order to get what you like. And so in the spirit of Ida B. Wells, Senator Charlene puts on her protest, and she's bringing it to light. And you see this image of her protest all over the national news because she is speaking that truth to power. And so just to highlight those ladies and the incredible work that they do in organizing communities here in Tennessee.
I also want to highlight what you guys do. So we have a journalist and a registrar on deck. And so you talked about the sort of truth telling and the real investigative journalism that Ida B. Wells did. And for those of y'all who don't know, when these guys were lynched, all right, she was very forward about, one, the reasons that people claimed they were often lynching Black men. One of the number one reasons was the alleged rape of white women. What she highlighted is that white women would often be getting into consensual sexual relationships with these men. And then when their sexual relationship became known, then this was justification for the lynching. And so that was just one of the things that she was very candid about. But in this political milieu, I'm wondering what things you think that journalists need to tell the truth about.
That journalists need to tell the truth about?
Or you can say have been telling the truth about it for MLK 50, right?
Yeah, I think specifically about the work that we've been doing around the Memphis Safe Task Force, and the truth that we've been telling about what they've been doing since they've been here. I think about a story that a few of our reporters wrote about when the Memphis Safe Task Force first came here and who they were actually stopping in their vehicles and who they were actually arresting or detaining. And our journalists found that they, in the first 2 months of the Memphis Safe Task Force being here, that they only arrested 6% of white people, which I think paints, this bigger picture of the fact that we know y'all was mostly pulling over Black and brown people anyways. That was conversation that was happening amongst the city in general. And then I think what's really cool about what our journalists do is they take the conversations that people are already having and they start to pick at the scab because they want to know what's underneath it, right? They want to know the mess that you're hiding under the Band-Aid. And like when we discovered that and showed everybody, I think it was really eye-opening because it confirmed things that people were already experiencing. Like, we know you ain't pulling over white people. And here's the data to back it up.
And so her paper was here in Memphis was called Memphis Free Speech. And it's important because the work of journalists is really to get down to the bottom of it. And in an age of a 24-hour news cycle, I would imagine journalists feel pressured to try to create some level of content and maybe not always deep dive the way that they should. And maybe that's why everybody is in MLK 50 and doing things as thorough and substantively. But I do think the other thing it does is it creates an outlet for the typical American to say, but somebody who is credible, somebody who's credentialed, looked into this and found what was true. And it does, in this case, confirm our suspicions. The other thing, though, is she was obviously a suffragist. Do we need some political movement today? Like, is there any disenfranchisement happening that you see as a registrar?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so it was interesting. So we're preparing for this midterm election, and we're seeing things like concerns of, will there be ICE agents at the polling locations? Speak about voter intimidation. Be for real. But this is the reality that we are having to face. And so I remember being at the polls doing the primaries, and I would get calls from lawyers saying, hey, did you see any ICE agents at this polling site? And that is a real fear for people. And that is literally at its core the intimidation of voters. And so you have to think about the immigrant families who not just would be maybe going to vote, but also who might be using facilities, for example, like a Geisman Community Center. Families of different cultures all commune there. And so you have to think, is this going to be an inviting space for these families who usually frequent these locations for community? And so that's a concern. Also, you have to think about things like some scenarios we've spoken about is like the concept of like there might be bomb threats happening at some polling sites in parts of the South. That is literally voter intimidation. Like that's literally a concern that people are facing. But it's also things that sometimes get often overlooked. And so it's just like, are ballots going missing, or is these voting locations, will they have enough ballots for the Black side of town and stuff? And so you have to take all of these into account. And so as a person who works in the voter engagement space, we have to be mindful and we have to be watchdogs. We have to come with the data and we have to let the people know that we're watching them. We will call the Secretary of State on you, and we will put it on Front Street, and we will call our journalists at MLK 50 and let them know that y'all doing something funny over there at y'all's polling sites, and we don't mind letting the world know about it.
Got you.
I'll gladly accept your tip.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about the 19th Amendment. Anybody want to elaborate on that? Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Right. I mean, I just believe the 19th Amendment was, well, to back up, the fact that we're in an interesting place. We're in Tennessee, and Tennessee was the final state to ratify the 19th Amendment.
Can you tell us what it is for people who don't know?
The 19th Amendment, it gave women the right to vote. And just in my personal belief about the 19th Amendment is that, it was originally written for, white women to have the right to vote. I think that, it's still to this day difficult for Black and brown women to, access the right to vote. And we see that now playing out with redistricting across the South and definitely in Memphis.
Okay. Any thoughts? All right. So as we get ready to open it up for questions or comments from the audience, and so at that point, I'm going to jump in this seat so I can face you all and be one of the people who might answer some questions. But also, we welcome comments. I'd like for folks to prepare their closing remarks. I'd like for us to just think about the work that she did and how it has paved the way for us. It wasn't until the 90s, I think, that we had our first mayor here, First People's Convention. She was a part of a group who elected their first Black city councilman in Chicago, right? And that was really a large point. And when they were knocking doors, folks were talking to them about if they were wearing the trousers or that they should just be at home. And so she was still, facing the sort of gendered scrutiny that we have come to just see as part of American life. But one of the reasons that she was involved in that is that she believed that people who were qualified, men, women, or otherwise, again, needed to do this for safety and that they needed to do this for the uplifting of the race. We're sitting here in Memphis, Tennessee in a moment where we've just experienced massive redistricting. I think people need to understand the importance of those races. They redistricted our congressional districts on the federal level. But they were able to do that because they have a supermajority on the state level. So those of us who care about that sort of thing and having representation in our federal Congress do need to be involved in a work that seeks to change that power dynamic at the state level. And I'm saying that because right now, the sexiest race by many people's telling may be District 9 and what's going to happen in that Democratic primary where many people may expect that Justin's winning, and we want to know if he's going to be too radical against conservative Brent Taylor, who ain't even from here, but wants to make Memphis matter, right? And I imagine that an Ida B. Wells attitude would be, we need to knock as many doors, get as many people involved, not only in that race, but understanding that right here, we have House District 97, which people are in. Across the state, we have House District 75 that folks have identified as places that can be flipped, right? And I think that that's important because I'm not trying to flip them for any particular politician. And my hope is not in a person as a savior or even necessarily a party. I'm trying to flip them towards progressivism. I just don't believe that people should be hungry, homeless, unhealthy, uneducated in this country. And I'm for whichever people or party are trying to push that. And so I would like to just say, what I take from her is we need to do this for our safety. We need to do this for the uplifting of our people and all people, right? We should just not in 2026 be dealing with the same problems people were dealing with in 1826. But in many ways we are. So what I'd like to do is actually get I don't know. Should we do our closing remarks? No, I want to open it up to the audience. So you may have questions, you may have comments. I would like to say that we have two people that I have high regard and respect for in the audience, and I feel like they may know something. One is organizer who I look up to, which is Gail Cherie, a unionist and local badass. Also, we have the CEO of Sister Reach, which is a RJ, which is to say reproductive justice org in the audience. We have some other people, but I would like to give this people an opportunity to have comments or ask questions. Earl can't do the mic here and deal with things that people might say in the live, but I'm gonna hop over here. If we don't have questions or comments, we're gonna close and get to interviews. Ask me some stuff about Ida B. Wells because I want to talk about her.
Thank you so much. I'm Gail Tyree, local organizer and CDUX union rep. And I just want to say, I don't really have a question, but I want you all to know that that discussion was well received. I found it to be very educational and very uplifting. So I thank you so much for being here, and thank you for those amazing comments and excellent responses.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So
much.
kind of. Anybody else? Yes.
Hello. I'm curious if y'all have thoughts on how to build like communities that can build. So people like Ida B. Wells didn't have a choice but to be courageous. But I'm wondering if we could think about how we build communities that encourage people to be courageous for the sake of each other, not just because of survival. You know, how do we, what lessons from Wells or from some of the folks that y'all mentioned today could we maybe bring into our own lives?
I would love that question. It takes intentionality to be in community. It takes being that person to put yourself in the space to speak to strangers, and strangers become over time gradually into family. And so it takes you going out. And I feel like it's interesting. I feel like COVID kind of put us into a place to where we kind of got in our own spaces in our own heads. And so it takes people who want to be in community to check up on you, not even just because I need you to go vote, but I need you to be good as a human being. I need you to be good as a woman or as a whole person. I need you to be good. And so that's what community is all about. And I feel like Ida B. Wells started this work because she cared about her friend as a human, and that her friend got taken away from her. And so I feel like we have to be focused on the humanity, and we have to see that humanity in one another and wanting them to be in the space with us. And so just by creating friendship and creating love amongst one another, that is how we create community. That is how we move together. That is how we create a better Memphis, really, to be very honest.
Gotcha. So I would like to make sure I have the question. I think it was something like, how can we build a community that's more courageous? And then you made some allusion to that Ida B. Wells had maybe less choice. I actually want to challenge the question. Ida B. Wells absolutely had a choice. Many people around her were less courageous than she was. That's one of the reasons I like her, right? Because while other people were saying, it's 18 such and such, it's 1913, we can't jump to the front of the parade, she was courageous enough to do that. Some of the other things she had courage about, like she had bought a ticket to like a bus or rail cart deal, and they were basically trying to pressure her into sitting in some segregated seat. She sued, saying, look, I paid the full fare. I am supposed to be able to ride where I paid to ride. She did initially get some settlement as it went up. They used Plessy versus Ferguson to deny her complete justice. But that fight was a deliberate choice. So what I'm saying to folks is, if we want to build a community that's courageous, we got to say courage is a choice. And you don't do that because you don't have any fear. You do it because while you are afraid, you understand that if you do nothing, if you don't resist, and this is why I read those quotes earlier. She was saying that the more we cringe, the more we beg, the more we will have to, the more they will insult and disenfranchise you. So I'm saying, call the question like an organizer. Can I count on you to have some courage? And it looks like register. It looks like vote. It looks like join a group to know more. Join one of the groups who are helping folks be prepared when they see that ICE is lining up to aggress someone or the police are trying to jump on somebody black, right? So I'm saying courage is a choice, and I love her because she answered the call to that choice. I see that you have a question or comment.
It's not a question. It was more so on her. Well, it was a comment on her question, not necessarily on the courage part, but more so on the community part. I just think when we speak about community, I think it's important to speak about like the not so cute things around community. And so with community, it comes with like holding ourselves accountable and being responsible for one another, but also like accepting that like being in community and like loving people is an inconvenience, and like being accepting and aware of that, and like just having like the grace and epistemic humility to understand that like things are not going to be perfect. Like I feel like community has become such like a trendy word, and I feel like we have taken away like the true meaning. Like people have like lost the plot of like what community and what community building actually is. And it doesn't feel good like a lot of times. Like it don't feel good to like show up constantly to the same type of events, talking about the same type of problems, and like we're constantly trying to figure out solutions to the same things that we've been talking about for decades at this point. So that was just something that I wanted to add.
Thanks. Did you have your hand raised? Could you share the mic while we're
Can I respond to her really
sure.
quick? Yeah, and I just wanted to plus one what she said and say that I think a big part is like showing up. And I'll say that like I just moved to Memphis in December, and almost every community event I've been at, I see Isaac in the back there.
Hey, Isaac.
And then the community events that I don't go to, and I look at the pictures on Facebook, I see Andrea in the pictures on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And so I think, like you said, a big part is showing up over and over and over again, and your face and your name being in the place, even though, you know, it might, like you said, be an inconvenience, but like knowing that you're there anyways is so important. So yeah, just wanted to call that out.
I love the conversation. I think what I'd like to challenge is the fact that we think that we need to build something. It's already here. I think that we need to just do our part to continue to do the work. I think that I think that there is an illusion that Black work stopped, that there is an illusion that Black resistance stopped, that there's an illusion that Black courage stops because perhaps a Black man isn't standing in front of it. But perhaps it's not being led by an identified leader. But I would say, as someone who has only been working in Memphis for about 15 years, I didn't come to a place where no work had been done that I had to build. Perhaps reproductive and sexual justice wasn't actualized as what it was in action that was actually occurring in the city. There were reproductive and sexual justice got here before I got here. It may not have had a name. It may not have been able to, it may not have been clear that that was exactly what folks were doing when they were fighting for sexual health education, or the first Black mayor, or, you know, being able to access a great grocery store in my neighborhood. It doesn't matter whether or not I would live in Orange Mound. Oh, that's reproductive justice work, regardless of whether or not it had a name. So I think I think that it is because we believe that there is something that we have to do that wasn't there already. I think that's why I would never throw my elders away. I will never act like my elders aren't here, but I do see that being a bit of a culture of movement building that doesn't always include their voices, their experiences, their history, and the work they did, right? They did a lot of work before I got here in 1974. King was already dead by the time I got here. You know what I'm saying? We'd already seen Memphis rise, fall, and become fearful before my mom and daddy even brought me, into the world. And so I say that to say, I do think that we have an obligation and a responsibility to keep, to revive what maybe within is dead, which is why maybe we feel like that, or we think that we might be able to say something like that. I just think we have an obligation. Mother King is no longer with us in the physical realm, but she is our ancestor. And as I do work on behalf of unhoused individuals, I might not be able to pick up the phone and call her around what's going on today, but I remember where she sent me yesterday, and who she told me to go feed and where to go find them yesterday, right? And so I say that to say, Mother King built something, right? Mother Georgia King built something, and so many other countless folks before her who are nameless and faceless and maybe don't have, certain celebrity around them. Ida B. Wells wasn't just lifting up herself. She was lifting up those nameless, faceless, maybe not so well-knownness people to ensure that we all could move forward, right? Making sure that Black women weren't left out of the conversation, understanding that without Black women, you weren't even going to be able to get the full Black community, all the things. And so, I just want to lift that up because I'm always mindful of not getting too comfortable in what I've done, as if it was the first thing that was done. Because it wasn't the first thing that was done, but I have been able to bring my lived experience and contribution to the larger ecosystem of power building. And we do have a responsibility not to let it die. And we do have a responsibility to create, those communities where we don't have to do this kind of stuff all the doggone time. But until we get there, because we're not there, right? Until we get there, we do have an obligation to honor the past, figure out what we need to do to correct or realign or redefine the current, and then create the futures that we all deserve, that Ida B. Wells and so many others help to create for us to be able to have. So I just want to lift that up in the context of build.
Thanks so much for that. So she's raised three things for me, and then I'll come to Isaac. So one is she's talking about ancestors. Two, I'm gonna say relationship tension. The third thing is representation. The reason it was important to me to stick with her is because I do believe that we are in a milieu that is experiencing a type of psychosis. To be disconnected from your ancestors is a problem. And the Black nationalist movement in this country was largely in response to the fact that they saw that every other nation had a national mythos where they tied themselves to a movement greater than themselves. And it started with a people and places and languages and accomplishments. So I am just saying, I do not agree with and will not capitulate to like some online movement that I'm not my ancestors. I am literally, as in their DNA runs through me, that I stand and on their shoulders, and any work I do is because what they did. So that's why I'm not in a rush to contemporize and say what I and my peers are doing. We ain't doing nothing that they did not do. We could not do it if they had not done it. And anything great that we believe that we do because of them. That's first thing. I'm a Black preacher, so I had three. All right. The second one was relationship tension. All right. The reason that I picked her because she had a white woman that she disagreed with as a friend. Okay, her and Susan B. She called her a dear friend in her own memoirs. But they got to arguing. All right, they argued worse than me and her argue. All right, she had Black men that she loved. So if somebody's looking for how you can be a Black feminist and be married to a man who is progressive enough to support your work and not try to diminish your greatness, she embodied that. All right. She also embodied my last point. I don't think we have a representation problem where we don't see Black women in office. If you look at our city council, if you look at our school board, if you look at our board of commissioners, if you look in Congress, I don't believe that it's not that we don't have Black women, Black men, anybody queer. I just believe that irrespective of bodies, people are being assimilated into a system that is pro-corporatism and against freedom, right? So I'm not interested in as much as if they are black, white, man, woman. I want somebody who wants freedom for everybody and is willing to fight for that. So, Isaac.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Isaac. I've got two questions. The first one is, what do you think are some of the challenges or obstacles that are keeping people from voting and wanting to vote? And the second one was in comment about the Attorney General piece. Do you truly believe in Trump's America that if ICE was sent to the polling polls, that the Attorney General will be responsive to protect voters, whether that be black or brown voters? I feel as if that knowing how the state of Tennessee has always capitulated to Trump in many ways, that the Attorney General will not respond to protect voters and allow the intimidation to be present at voting polls if it does come to that. So my second question is just based off of, I guess, how you feel. Do you truly feel that the Attorney General will allow voters to not be intimidated by ICE presence or National Guard presence?
That was your first question. Can you ask the second? Say the second thing again.
Well, the
One
first question was
General.
about, like, what do you believe are the obstacles or challenges currently to get people to vote? And then the second question is about if the Attorney General would truly protect like black and brown voters from intimidation.
Okay. I think one of the barriers to voting and voting turnout is the fact that we're dealing in the space to where people might fear that I'm voting, you're telling me to vote, but my circumstances aren't changing. There's still poverty around me. There's still issues and concerns with my schools that I'm sending my children to. I'm still working 2 and 3 jobs just to get by. And you telling me to care enough to leave my 2 jobs to go vote at a certain time when I'm working a double shift and I'm tired. And so you're dealing with the fatigue that weighs on people and the concerns that people are going through. And that's very real. And we have to understand and be mindful of that. And as organizers in this space, we have to understand and that's another thing of when we speak about seeing the humanity in people. Yeah, we want you to vote, but we also have to care about you as a person too as well, and understanding that you or your family might be dealing with things and stuff. And so just coming to that understanding, and I'll let y'all also speak on that point, but also to your second question. So what happens in a voter protection space is we would contact the Secretary of State if we see a voting irregularity happening at a precinct. And so we would immediately report it to the Secretary of State, and they usually rectify it with the voting precinct. That's how an actual voting protection situation incident might happen. We report it to the Secretary of State, and like it's the law that they have to rectify it. And if they do not rectify it, which sometimes they don't, we taking you to court. Period. That's end of discussion. We getting the lawyers on the line immediately. And usually when the situation is originally poured, the lawyer already knows, and it's like putting a plan of action into place as we speak. And so I don't think it's a way to where in Trump's America, I'm planning for him and his opposition, but we're also preparing what do we do in spite of. And so we can't just lay down and just take it type of thing. I just can't let you oppress and disenfranchise the votes of people. I have to prepare and equip my people or work with teams who will go fight this at all tooth and nail. And so we will have lawsuit upon lawsuit upon lawsuit to fight it. So.
Yeah, I just want to say I meant Secretary of State, not Attorney General. But thank you for that clarification, because I work with immigrant groups as well.
Absolutely.
And so it's good to have that information from you so that those who are considering voting but yet have reservations can know that there are ways in which that you guys will take action for that.
Yes.
So thank you.
Organized Tennessee is the organization here, so they will have a hotline number you can contact if you see any voting irregularities at your space. So they'll put out a number you can contact, and you can let them know, and they'll have the people on the line, and they'll fight tooth and nail for you, because it is your sacred right to vote.
Okay. Well, so as we wrap up this piece, I want to reflect on this. I keep highlighting that her parents died when she was 16. She wasn't one of the deltas in the elite Black women's club. And so maybe it was their, right? So maybe it was their background that made them have a cuter approach because they'd had a cuter background. Maybe the reason that she had the grit and grind that we associate with Memphis is because her life demanded that. And I'm saying that because part of our community and relationship building has to mean that we respect where other folks come from, right? Neither one or nobody gets to choose their parents in the scenarios into which they are born. And so that's one piece. But Isaac, you're asking a question that I know I've been trying to answer for 20 years, right? And trying to do work in the space. Here's what I currently think. And I will then get closing remarks and we will do some interviews. I want to do mine. I think that the biggest challenge that we have, I want to agree with and affirm your idea of living conditions and people not feeling that it's getting better. But the other piece is that we have some unrealistic expectations about what's supposed to happen as a consequence of an election or an election cycle. Okay. In 1971, Lewis Powell wrote what's called the Powell Memo. That's what we call it in like popular talk. But what he wrote, he called the attack on American free enterprise system. What was that about? So first of all, he wrote it in 71. That's after 68 when King dies here. So what he was thinking, and many capitalists and corporatists were thinking, was that, man, we're losing. You have women's rights, labor rights, civil rights, environmental protection, and consumer protection gaining things for the everyday American. And they felt that those gains were losses to them. So he surmises that they need to do three things. I should also say this. If you don't know who Lewis Powell was, he starts out as a big-time lawyer. And he was representing cigarette companies. And what he was arguing as a lawyer was that we were violating the cigarette companies' constitutional rights by not giving them equal time to say that cigarettes weren't causing cancer, even though they were. So now he's appointed to the Supreme Court by Richard Watergate Nixon. All right. Now, this memo did not see the light of day until a year or so later when it was leaked by the press. All right. And what I'm talking about is political perspective. What he said in that memo was three things: that they needed to control the research, the thinking, right? And I mean that they mean at a big level with chair endowments and funding research and all of that, but on a lower level of textbooks, they want to control what we think. The second way is that they wanted to deal with the rhetoric. How do we talk about it? What's in the news? What's in the media? And you think about the massive right-wing onslaught we've seen, at least since Trump and Hillary, right? Where we know that they were using social media, foreign players and conservative players here, to change the thoughts. And I think that that's why that drastically impacted the way people think about voting in elections. One of the things that I did was I worked on an independent expenditure on behalf of Hillary in the city of Philadelphia. And I was amazed by the thousands of data points with people saying the same stuff. Our vote don't count. I'm not my ancestors. Crooked Hillary, all of these things that you know that they didn't originate, right? But the last thing he said is that they needed to control the results, as in of elections and court cases. And I think that's really important because I have to fight to not be discouraged in this moment, knowing that if something went up to the Supreme Court, it is corrupt. Okay, they don't want an ethics standing. So what I think is getting in our biggest obstacle to encouraging people to vote is a political perspective. I brought up Lewis Powell because the following year after he's appointed to Supreme Court, in 73, the Heritage Foundation was founded. If not in 73, 74, ALEC was founded. Why is that significant? Because if you know who the Heritage Foundation is, these are the folks who put out Project 2025. So now let's count from 71 to 25. This was a nonprofit that is being fueled by some of the richest and most powerful people on the planet. But did they get everything that they wanted in that election cycle? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? We cannot believe that we started fighting for freedom today and achieve it by the midterms, right? Like, we're going to have to dive in. We're going to have to dig our heels in and know that our political fight is a lifelong fight, right? Where we need some strategic aims and to work towards those. So as an organizer, I feel that we're guilty of it. We approach everything with urgency. This fire now, this thing now. But we also got to tell people you're going to have to get some longevity. This is going to be for you, for your kids, and your kids' kids. So I think that why people are not involved is because they really don't understand the fight. And so I hope that we can popularize it. So I'm CJU. I represent a lot of orgs here today. We're Up to Vote 901. First of all, I'm a Black man born, raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm also a part of Planned Parenthood staff. I also serve with Black Lives Matter and several other organizations. But more importantly, I serve with folks who just want to see progressivism in the country. I appreciate the folks who are in the audience, the people who are on the live stream. If you see me in the city today, ask me some stuff about Ida B. Wells. I won't talk about it. All right. I'd like to yield these final minutes to our panelists. I want to apologize publicly to Sister Alexis Ray. I realized that she was sitting in that audience because she didn't intend to be a panelist. And I want to apologize because I wasn't trying to strong arm you and make you be on the panel. I appreciate her. I apologize. I misunderstood. All right. But thank you for coming. Give your closing remarks and we'll move to the interviews.
Absolutely. It's okay. I'm glad I had a chance to talk about Ida B. Wells today too. As you all know, like I said before, I'm with MLK 50, Justice Through Journalism. If you weren't reading us, go read us now. Go to our website, go follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter. And after the panel, we will also be collecting you all stories about the first time that you voted. And so I'm really excited to hear, some of you all's experiences. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. And thank y'all so much for being here today. I'm Catherine Winsley. I'm honored just to be in the space with y'all and to just honoring this woman, Ida B. Wells. I'm representing myself. I'm me. I do voter engagement and I love y'all. And because that's the reason why I do voter engagement, because I love people. And so thank y'all so much just for being here today. And thank you to Dr. Fisher for allowing us to be in his space today too as well.
Awesome. So what should we do from here? In the fellowship hall, they have set up 3 rooms to take the stories of people. These should be why are we doing this? It's a digital archive. We know that our president is aggressing the Smithsonian, right? He doesn't want Black history to be anywhere. And so if we don't protect our narratives and stories, they might not be protected. And so these stories will be evolving as we do future events. Other people will be able to add their narratives to this digital archive that will live with MLK 50, Up to Vote, and be accessible to the public. And so you can go next door. It will be questions about maybe your first voting experience. I'm saying even my peak one, because my first one was trash. That's a whole other thing. But glad to have you. We would ask that you please move to the fellowship hall. And at 12, we are early voting. We're Up to Vote. I'm also an Abyssinian, so I represent them too. Today's the last day of early voting. If you haven't done it, come do it with us. We're going to do it at Abundant Grace. Peace and blessings. Bye. Oh, I forgot something else. I'm sorry. Mello, please raise your hand, is hosting a community baby shower. It will be done on August 22nd. I would like for folks to walk up to her and talk to her about that, please. So come check us out. I'll be posting more about that. We'll share with Up to Vote, also with Planned Parenthood and other folks who will. Peace. Bye.
Thank you.